So in this snippet, we're going to look at a common pattern that I use to implement infinite scroll in Vue. In fact, this could be translated to pretty much any other front-end framework if you wanted to, but we're going to focus on Vue. We don't really care where the data is coming from on the API, but I'm going to show you that anyway through the course so you kind of know where we're pulling this data from. But let's take a look at the demo of this. You can see here that I've got these kind of fake articles, and I've brought up the network tab in my developer tools just so we can see when these requests are being made. So if we head over to the API here, we've got a list of items. We've got some meta down here. Now, as long as your API and your pagination that you've implemented in your API is giving you the last page, that's pretty much all you need, as long as you can, of course, go ahead and actually choose the page that you want to go to. So I'm assuming that you are working with perhaps a framework that gives you this functionality. And I happen to be working with Laravel here. Okay, let's demo this out. We've of course loaded in page 1 to start things out. We've got quite a short page here, of course, until we reach the bottom when we start to see page 2 loaded in, page 3 loaded in, and I actually have 40 articles in the database. So we're going to go all the way down to page 4. And of course, when we get to the bottom, we stop loading in content, which is really important. And that's quite tricky to get working nice and cleanly. So that's pretty much what we're doing. Whether you're working with Laravel or any other framework, you should be able to get this set up in your project really, really quickly. And it's such a simple pattern that you'll be able to recreate it when you need it again. Okay, so I've cleared everything out from the introduction. It doesn't matter where you're doing this, whether you're doing this inside of a custom Vue built application, whether you've used Vue command line interface to build a project, or whether you're doing this in something like Nuxt.js. The pattern and the way that this works is going to be pretty universal all round. Now, we're using Tailwind on the client side here just to demo this out, just so we've got a little bit of height to each of these elements, so we have room to scroll. If not, just add some styles in there yourself, it doesn't really matter. Now, the first thing that we want to do is make a request to our API to actually fetch a list of these articles, or at least the first page. So I'm just going to hop over to the terminal here and do an npm install on Axios. And just while that's finishing, let's go ahead and import this and just make that initial request, just so we've got an iteration on this initial kind of component. Okay, so on mounted, that's where I want to do this. I'm currently just working within the kind of base app here, but this can be done within a component, it doesn't matter. And let's make sure we have some data within this component to store this out as well. So I'm just going to say that we have a list of articles, which is by default an empty array. So for our methods, let's create out an async method here to fetch, and I'm just going to call this fetch, that makes sense for now. And let's go ahead and await on a call to our API. So let's go over and grab the URL to this, and we're going to tack on a page number, but of course later we're going to make that dynamic. So let's go ahead and assign this to articles, and let's set the articles in our component data to the data property from Axios and then the data property from my API just here. So we should have a list of articles in there ready to go now. So I'm going to call fetch from mounted, and let's come up and just dump this out just to make sure that we've got that list of articles first of all. And sure enough we do, great. Let's iterate over this component here to output this, or this markup here to output this. So let's do a v4 article in articles, that makes sense. Let's make sure we give this a unique key. We do have an ID for each article, and that should be pretty much it to see a list of them things. Let's just replace out some of this data here. So let's output the article title, and let's output the article ID as well. Now the reason I'm outputting the article ID is so I can see that the next item in the stack is correct. Otherwise we might be loading in more than one page more than once, if that makes sense. So let's go ahead and, if I can spell description properly, output that description, and there we go. Great. So we've got loads of room to scroll down here and keep an eye on our network request. So we're going to jump straight in and we're going to grab the Vue Observe visibility package. What this allows us to do is on a particular element, so if we just head down here, use this directive here to invoke a method when that particular element comes into view. And of course, for our list of items, we want to load more in when we can see the bottom of the page. So if we go ahead and install this, we'll see how this works in just a second. So let's make sure we, of course, download this first of all. And let's just pull that in here very quickly. Now, really importantly, this uses the Intersection Observer API. So you may need to go ahead and grab a polyfill if you want to allow this to work in browsers that don't support fully Intersection Observer API. I'll let you go ahead and do that depending on what you're building this for, who you're building it for, etc. Okay, so we'll just pull this in from the package and then just use it on Vue as a global plugin. And I can do that over in main.js here because I'm using a Vue CLI built app. So let's pull that in, make sure we use that, and now we have access to that directive. Now, under the list of things that we're rendering, we're just going to have an empty div. That's all we really need for the purpose of this. So I'm just going to create an empty div here, and I'm going to go ahead and say Vue Observe Visibility. And I'm going to say something like handle scrolled to bottom. Now, there are loads of things that you can do to customize this plugin. Go ahead and check out the documentation if you need to find out anything else. But let's go ahead and check if this method is actually called first of all. So I'm just going to log something out in there and come over and give this a refresh. And let's open up our console. Now you'll immediately see that when I refresh this, we get this logged out twice, which doesn't really make sense. The reason that this is happening is because Vue is not rendering this content directly or initially because it's not server-side rendered. So we get a kind of flicker of this data not being available. That's why we've got two calls to this method. And if we scroll down, you can see we've got 3, 4, 5, so on and so forth. But we've also got 1 when we kind of scroll up. So we're seeing this being logged out quite a bit at the moment. Now, one way I like to get around this, at least the initial problem, is I like to attach a v-if to this. So I'm going to say if articles length. So this is only going to be shown when we have a list of articles, and that means that when I give this a refresh, we're only calling this once just here, which helps a little bit more. Now, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to bring into this method is visible. What this will help us do is perform a check with the Intersection Observer API. Check this and then return if it's not visible. So I'm going to say if not visible. That gives us a little bit of a better result. So let's just log out ABC once again. And let's come over and give this a refresh. So you can see initially that is not being logged. And when we come down, that's being logged. When I scroll back up again, it's not being logged, which is great. But when I go back down again, it is being logged. So that has massively improved the triggering of this method just by adding that check in there. Okay, so now that we have done that, we want to basically have a page number that we increment when we get to the bottom of the page, recall this fetch method, and then that will use the incremented page number. So we're going to add a page of 1 here. The first thing I'm going to do is change this over to this page, and then I'm going to come down, and when we do hit the bottom of the page, we're going to increment the page, and then we're going to recall fetch. Now that is pretty much it, because what's going to happen now is we load the initial content with page 1, we get to the bottom of the page, we increment it, and then we recall page 2. Let's head over and see what that looks like. So let's give that a refresh and let's scroll down. And at the moment, it doesn't look like that has worked. Now the reason for this is what we're doing is we're assigning articles the result we get back from this. What we should be doing is pushing new items onto this. So what I'm going to do is take the result from that and I'm going to push on the spread out version of that. Now these will be in an array. So we're spreading these out and pushing each of these objects onto the article stack, because of course we want to go from 1 to 10, but then add on to the top of the results that we already have. So let's scroll down now, and when we get to the bottom, we should see 11, 12, all the way up to 20, and then so on and so forth, all the way down to the bottom. Now, that looks like it's working great, but if we just head over to the Network tab, you can see that I'm actually making page requests to things like page 7, which don't actually contain any data. So if I carry on going down to the bottom of the page, we're really unnecessarily making a huge amount of network requests to our API. That's not what we want to do. So from the introduction, like I said, we're going to use this last page value here. What that will allow us to do is not increment the page beyond the last set of pages that we have for the data in our API. So to do this, we're going to go ahead and store the last page just in here. We're going to set that to 1 initially, because we would assume that we'd always have the last page set to 1. We'd always at least have 1 page. And then when we get the result back from our API, we can actually update this value, and that will update every time we fetch. So let's go ahead and say meta last underscore page, and that will then update to the value of 4. So now what we can do is inside of here, just after our visible check, we can use another check to again return if a condition is met, which will be if the page that we're currently trying to access is greater than or equal to the last page, e.g. 5, then we don't want to increment the page. So if we're on the last page, e.g. 4 or 5, then don't do anything. So now the difference is clear. If we go ahead and check the Network tab out, we scroll all the way down, we see 2, 3, and 4, but we don't go any further because the last page is 4, so there's no point even making a request to page 5. So that's pretty much it. That's the pattern. It's pretty straightforward. Of course, you can code this up how you like. This is just the way that I do it. But that's the general thing that we want to do. Handle scroll to the bottom, increment a page number, and load more information in. Now, just before you go, if you do want to hang around, I'm going to show you how to kind of take all of this, put it in a separate view component so it's a little bit easier to reuse. So we're going to look at a way that we can make this a bit more convenient to reuse throughout our application. So if you've got lots of places that you want to implement this, you kind of don't want to have to implement this here and the handle scroll to bottom every single time you need to use this in every page of your app. So let's go and create a component to make this a little bit more reusable. So I'm going to call this infinite scroll, and we're going to go ahead and just pop out a template here really quickly with just scroll in there for now. Let's go ahead and load this into our page. In fact, let's create a new page for this just so we don't lose what we've already got. I'm going to go ahead and rename this to app 0, and let's go ahead and create a new app.view file in here and paste that in. So over in app then, let's go and pull this in. I'm actually going to get rid of all of this. Let's go ahead and pull in that infinite scroll component, and let's import this just up here. So let's just pull that in from the components directory and infinite scroll, and let's just add that to our components list in our template. Great. I'm actually going to get rid of all of this as well because we've got a reference to it in that other page, so may as well start from scratch and work our way up. Great, so we've got that component in there. Now the purpose of this component is going to be for us to pass a list of items in, iterate through them items, but have the scroll handler within here that emits an event to tell us that we need to refetch data and repass a list of items in. So this is going to be a generic list of items, which means it could be articles, it could be users, it could be absolutely anything. So let's head over to that infinite scroll component, pull out our script section, and let's accept a prop in here of items. It doesn't matter what they are. They are required though, and we're going to set the type here to an array, even if it's an empty array. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to not self-close this component. Instead, what we're going to do is iterate through them items in here and use a slot which will allow us to render for each item however we want to render this. So inside of the infinite scroll, let's do a div in here, and let's say v4 item in items. Let's key these by an item ID. This is the only place that you could find this a little bit tricky. If you don't have an ID for a particular item, then you might not be able to use this, but we'll just assume that the API content is very similar. So we're going to have a slot in here, and the name for this slot is going to be item. What that will allow us to do is inside of here, create out a template, and within that template, choose what we want each of these items to look like as we iterate through them. And what we're going to do is we're going to do a vbind on that item that we're iterating through. So we get that in the slot scope of the thing inside of our component. Now, we're not working with any data at the moment, so we can't even see if this is working. So let's go over to our app0 page here, and let's just bring back our articles in our data here. So let's go ahead and return that, and let's grab this fetch method as well, but we're going to keep this super simple. So let's create out our methods, and let's just go ahead and make a request to, let's keep our page in there as well. And let's just, push them articles here. And then let's say that when this mounts, we're going to go ahead and fetch that information. So the items that we pass through as that prop are going to be them articles. And then what we can do is, like I said, with that template and that slot and the slot props, we can go ahead and receive for each of the iterations that data in here. So on this template, what we can now do is we can say vslot item, and we can pull out that item here, and then let's just dump this out for now. So we should see basically each of them articles listed out on here. Now we've got a little error here. We've got a missing prop. That needs to be items. And there we go. So for each of them, we're outputting the item that we're iterating through inside of this component. All that means is we can go ahead and take the markup that we were previously using, and we can pop that within here. The functionality is tucked away inside of our infinite scroll component to allow that to tell us when to refetch this information, but we can style each of the items up as we like. Now this is called item, so I'm just going to switch each of these over to item, and we should be good, and we should have exactly the same thing. Now the only thing we're not seeing is when we get to the bottom, of course, that re-trigger, but that is exactly what we're going to do, but internally to infinite scroll. So again, let's come over to app0 and take this, and let's pop this just at the bottom here, and we'll say vif items.length this time. We'll still implement the handle scroll to bottom. Let's go ahead and grab that. But the only difference now is what we're not going to do is call the fetch method. We're going to emit an event from here. So let's go ahead and emit an event, and we're just going to call this refetch, for example. And we want to say what page we want to refetch from. Now at the moment we're handling the page from outside of here, but it'd be a good idea if we took this and handled that internally to the infinite scroll component. So let's go ahead and create out the data in here to hold this. And let's go ahead and say, let's get rid of this line for now, and let's reference this page, and we can increment that page, and that's just about good to me. So what this now means is that refetch will allow us to, outside of this, go ahead and say, well, when we need to refetch, we can just call the fetch method, but that will accept in now, because we've used the page in here, that will accept in now the page that we want to call. We can reference that from here. When we initially fetch that, we can fetch page 1. So let's just run over this really quick before we tidy this up. So we've got a fetch method which accepts a page in. We fetch page 1. Then over in infinite scroll, we always assume we're on page 1 to start with, although you could accept that in as a prop if you wanted to. That goes ahead and iterates through each of the items, allowing us to customize the item via a slot and the slot props that we've got here. So we can actually grab all that API information out. We've got the vobserve visibility directive in there to handle scroll to bottom, which increments the page internally and then emits that incremented page. So if we just give this a refresh, we should see, I think there's going to be an error. Yes, we've got this emit is not a function. Just go ahead and make sure we $sign that, and let's come up, scroll down, and there we go. That's working in exactly the same way. But just doing this really small change allows us to just not have to fiddle around externally with handling scroll to bottom. We can just really easily use that functionality. Now we need to figure out what to do with the last page stuff. that's a condition that might be best left outside of this particular component. So for example, that might be handled in fetch. We might want to still keep the page number in here, or the last page number. So we might want to say last page 1 and then always update that. So set last page to articles, data, meta, last page. So we still keep that up to date, but then we check the page that we're requesting against this last page. So we do that inside of fetch rather than inside of here. So let's go over and just check this out and make sure that that's working. It doesn't look like it's working at the moment, so let's have a look here. And of course we've put greater than or equal to, 1 is equal to 1, so that doesn't make sense. Let's go all the way down to the bottom, keep an eye on our network tab, and yeah, so we're not making any additional requests when we reach the bottom. Great. So that just about wraps it up. Of course, there's nothing wrong with going with the first approach that we looked at and just doing this all on one page. If you just have 1 or 2 pages that do that, it's probably fine. But I think wrapping it very lightly in something like this makes sense. So you can reuse this a little bit more conveniently. Like I said, without having that handle scroll to bottom every page that you want to use this. You've just got a little bit of simple fetching going on. And then all of that is handled by this infinite scroll component with that slot and slot prop, which allow you to completely customize the output for each of the API items. So there we go, infinite scroll in Vue, whichever way you want to do it.